We welcome everyone to our joint committee hearing for decision-making purposes. Today is Wednesday, March 2nd. It's 9 a.m. We're having our joint committee meeting by video conference and also in conference room 430 at the state capitol. The purpose of today's joint committee meeting is for decision-making on House Bill 2024 relating to Mauna Kea. I want to thank all the members for their work on this very challenging measure. As there's three co-chairs, three chairs of this joint House committee, we recognize the paramount importance of Mauna Kea and the very serious responsibility we have to manage this public trust resource. And we acknowledge the very strong opinions on all sides of this issue. Through this legislation and through the Mauna Kea Working Group, the House is seeking a path forward that provides a substantive role for Native Hawaiians in decision-making about the management of Mauna Kea and provides a stable future for astronomy on Mauna Kea. I know that this proposed legislation is still a work in progress, but I would like to describe for the members the amendments proposed for HB 2024 that's before us for decision-making today. And these are, I've mentioned this to you already, members, but I want to just articulate this for the members of the public who are listening in. The amendments that I am proposing to make to HB 2024 are to incorporate all four clarifying amendments recommended by the Attorney General in testimony, to add to the findings section language provided by Dr. Puakanahele regarding the Kumu Kanawai natural laws, which guide the care of the Mauna. Replacing the Mauna Kea throughout the measure with the words Mauna Awa Kea. We would adopt the Office of Hawaiian Affairs suggested amendment to change Office of Hawaiian Affairs CEO to the chairperson of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Board of Trustees or the chairperson's designee. We would add as an additional member of the Management Board of the Authority, the President of the University of Hawaii or the President's designee. We will note in the committee report that additional consideration should continue regarding adding a representative of Mauna Kea observatories to the Management Board of the Authority. We'd like to adopt the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement suggested amendment regarding the provision on protection of Native Hawaiian rights. So that it reads, protect traditional and customary Native Hawaiian rights as set forth in the state constitution and not unduly burden individuals exercising such rights. We would also add an amendment regarding the plan to restore the Mauna to its original state. When we would add the words, when ground-based observatories are rendered obsolete due to developments in space-based astronomical technology. Regarding prohibition of commercial use, we would replace the word shall with may. So it reads, the authority may prohibit commercial uses and activities. And we would add some language as requested, as actually intended by the Mauna Kea Working Group from Chapter 171. We would bring those provisions from Chapter 171 into this statute regarding lease requirements and safeguards, lease terms, duration, and issuance, prohibition on lessees acquiring any rights to prehistoric or historic remains on leased lands, authorizing the authority to lease to nonprofit entities, and authorization of the authority to lease to other government agencies through direct negotiation. We will defect the effective date to July 1, 3000 to continue discussion on this important measure. And the appropriation amount is still blank since we don't have a final number from DLNR as to what they are spending now on management services. So with those proposed amendments, I did circulate with members the proposed HD1. There were some drafting errors in it, which we will correct. Since the authority may not sell land, we would remove provisions that relate to that were imported from 171, which are not relevant. And we do need to correct some Hawaiian diacriticals as well. So members, you have this information. I provided to you yesterday afternoon. I hope you've had a chance to look at it. So my recommendation to all the committees, but I'll go first to the Water and Land Committee. My recommendation is to pass with amendments as I've described. Members of Water and Land, I'd like to ask first for your comments, then go for a vote, and then I'll turn it over to Chair Nakashima to propose amendments and take discussion and have a vote in Judiciary Hawaiian Affairs, and then third, we'll go to Finance Committee. So first to Water and Land Committee. Discussion on my proposed amendments. Representative Ganadin, please proceed.
Briefly, thank you so much, Chair, and to all those that participated in the development of this working group. I'm letting the members and the public know that I made several trips to the community that developed on Mauna Kea in 2019, and I was there on the most eventful day when a large police force showed up to arrest individuals. Up until entering office, and I served as counsel pro bono for 6 individuals charged with petty misdemeanors stemming from those protests of summer 2019. I checked and I'm not conflicted, but I'm letting the members and the public know. I was witness to the very near possibility of state violence, and that is something that affects me to this day and the way that I hear the testimony. In light of the testimony and the amendments presented by the chair, I'll be voting aye. And thank you to all those that participated.
Thank you, Representative. Other discussion from Water and Land Committee members. Representative Kobayashi, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be voting WR. A number of items. One is the body politic situation. Previously in Waterland and in Finance, we had a bill that would transfer lands about 1 acre from University of Hawaii to Department of Hawaiian Homelands. The university in its testimony said that it was a body politic. I mean, it was a body corporate. It was not a body politic, a body corporate. And that the decision to transfer the land could only be made by the Board of Regents. So even if we, legislature, had to put into law the transfer of land, that would not by itself override the Board of Regents. So in this case, you would have transfer of land, easily hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps $1 billion, to a body corporate that would have the land essentially in fee ownership in perpetuity, unless it gave it up or did something to transfer the land. So I think that given the situation where nothing could be done with the land, as is the case with the university land that I just mentioned for over 40 years, other state agencies might have difficulty assisting with issues such as conservation, invasive species, historic preservation, etc. etc. And so I think that that's a consideration. The other has to do with what would be the purpose of the legislation. And it seems that the purpose of the legislation is essentially to transfer some land which some people consider sacred to a group that is very heavily Hawaiian in spirit and in blood. And the stated purpose is not very clear to me. And so I have some concerns about that. I don't even know what the amendment is that has to do with ground-based observatories rendered obsolete. I mean, for some people, ground level observatories are already obsolete. At least technically, they are far less superior than space-based telescopes. But they're still useful. That is, ground-based observatories are still useful. So I think there are lots of little questions and big ones. And so I'm voting WR. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And you are right. This is a work in progress, and I appreciate your comments, and we do need to continue working on this. Other discussion from members of Water and Land Committee?
If I may, Chair.
Vice Chair, please proceed.
When this proposal came out, it was, some people were speaking against it, but I do believe that in difficult situations come solutions. And before us today, we have a path forward, we have a solution. And so I applaud the working group for coming up with this. And I think this is just one great first step, but there are still some more steps that we have to do. I appreciate the effort, but for today, I'll be voting WR on this effort because I do think that it would be important to include a representative from the astronomical community or for the astronomy community on this board as well in deciding. And so today I'll be voting WR. Thank you.
Understood. Thanks for those comments. Other discussion from members of the Water and Land Committee? Seeing no further discussion, my recommendation is to pass HB 2024 with amendments. Vice Chair for the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 2024 with amendments. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye with reservations. Representative Ganadin.
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi.
Reservations.
Representative Kong.
Reservations.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Ono.
Aye.
Representative McDermott. Excused. The measure passes.
Thank you, members. Now turn it over to Chair Nakashima for vote in Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs.
Thank you very much, Chair Tarnas. Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs, recommendations to pass with amendments. Members, any questions or comments?
Chair.
Representative McKelvey.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your indulgence. Chair, I'm going to be voting with serious reservations on this measure today. I believe it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good are some of these amendments that were made, like removing the obsolete telescopes from the mountain, which has been a source of concern both within the academic community as well as the population at large, as well as the addition of the May language for commercial activities. However, the bad is that this commission operates in a vacuum and has no checks and balances on it. And further down the road, 10, 20 years from now, it may come up with decisions that profoundly cut counter to both the community and the stakeholders, to which there may be no recourse. And finally, the ugly. I have to disagree that this is a work in progress. This is a triple joint single committee. This is one and done. The amendments that are being made today, while greatly appreciated, there'll be no chance for the public to comment on them in another committee hearing on the House side. It will pass to the Senate. They will make amendments to which we will have no recourse, and then it will go to conference committee. I think this undermines and hurts public transparency in the process. And in my community meetings, this has been the source of contention from those who care about the issue going forward. That being said, opponents and proponents alike have expressed that this is better than the current situation, as much as the issues around it suffice. So I will be voting with reservations because of these issues I've outlined. And I'm hope that this process can be opened up to the public, so their comments and amendments can be, can be ratified or examined by them in a public forum. And thank you again for allowing me to have these comments.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or discussion, members of the judiciary? Representative Lowen.
Thank you. I'll be also voting with some very serious reservations today. First of all, just based on the overwhelming amount of testimony in opposition from Big Island, and let's be clear that this is fundamentally a Big Island issue. In opposition to this from both groups that support and oppose having astronomy on Mauna Kea. So, a lot of opposition from all corners. And, I have to echo some of the procedural concerns. The referral was designed to expedite this and provide fewer opportunities for public input. And I'm also a little wary at this point of, future House-led working groups, if having a working group means that we cannot make amendments and that we're, discounting opinions of legislators because we have to defer to what decisions were made in the working group, which is, how things feel. So I know that the chairs did put a lot of work into that, and I appreciate it. This is a problem that we need to find solutions for, and there's really sincere efforts being made. And so, for that reason, I want to honor their desire to have this move forward and have the discussion continue, but with reservations.
Thank you very much. Representative Kobayashi. Dale Kobayashi.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd really like to believe what's being said about this bill by the chairs, that this is one of the objectives is to give a voice to the Native Hawaiian community. I like to believe it, I just don't. There's really, when you look at the history of how our government has dealt with the Hawaiian people, it's been pretty one-sided. There's fundamental differences between the way Western culture and Hawaiian people look at land at a basic level. And our history on this issue in general has just been filled with broken promises and broken trust. There's little reason for me to have optimism that our bill here is somehow going to change all of that and give, like it's been said, a voice to the Hawaiian people. This will ratify the plans for astronomy on the mountain, and I think that's pretty clear. And that will basically set down that precedent that we have decided that astronomy in large scale is the best course for the mountain. And that's really against what I've been standing for on this and what many others do. I can't support this in any way, and I'm voting no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Kobayashi. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Chair. This bill was supposed to bring both sides together. It does neither. In fact, if anything, it kicks the can not down the road, but down the mountain. It's only perpetuating what otherwise, if you look at the testimony, there's no consensus. So when we pass something and it doesn't do anything, we haven't done our work, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm no with reservations. There is some hope for the bill, but if it's a work in progress, we need a lot more progress to make this substantively. Otherwise, we're just saying, hey, we did something, we passed the bill, we did our job, you guys just didn't follow what we said. No, this has got to be better, finer tuned, and not put out to the community to where the community is still up in arms because this bill doesn't even bring the community together. So it needs more talk, more discussion, and more, and I would side with what Representative Kobayashi just said. Look, you got to tilt this towards the Hawaiians because otherwise the broken promises of historical predominance will never go away. So we need a solution that brings the group together, and we have not got that. As I said, we're kicking the can down the mountain. For those reasons, this is a no vote with reservations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of Representative Nakamura.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I will support this bill. I'd like to just acknowledge the work of our Land and Water Chair, Judiciary and Finance Chairs to make the proposed amendments to the bill that I think greatly strengthens it by taking into account the concerns raised in the Saturday hearing. It shows we're listening and willing to make adjustments based on public input. I also feel that for any contentious case, you will never get 100% support. And in this case, you have people who support development on Mauna Kea and people who oppose development on Mauna Kea in opposition to this bill, which tells me you've hit some sweet spot that shows that, you know, you're never going to please everyone, but we have to do things differently. We have to make a paradigm shift. And I think this bill is a first step to get us there. So thank you very much for all who worked on this.
Thank you. Members of Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs, any further discussion?
Chair.
Representative Lopresti.
Thank you. I really do appreciate the work that you and the other chairs put into this, but I support the intent of the legislation, but I don't support the process. I agree with previous representatives who mentioned, you know, this is a one and done. This is the biggest super committee I've ever seen in my 6 years in the legislature. And there's no opportunity for public input after this. It's not enough that we had one hearing and then we made some changes, but then we don't wait and listen and get more testimony as to whether or not these changes make sense. I think that's a fatal flaw in the process, regardless of the outcome of the bill. I'm also disappointed in that it seems to me, and I agree with Rep. Lowen, who had mentioned, this seems like it. I don't know. The next time we want to have a House working group on something, the expectation should just be that, well, whatever the House working group comes back with, we all just got to take it and move it along. The legislature is not a rubber stamp for working groups. And it's really deeply disturbing that it feels like that's what this is being made into, that a working group goes out and comes up with some agreements. Well, we're not a working group. You know, I take my job far too seriously to just say, well, the working group came up with it. And well, you know, there's not going to be another opportunity for public input on this. And so I'll just have to vote yes and maybe reservations and hold my nose. I think it's a long-standing fallacy in public policy work to say that just because all sides don't like it, we must have done something right. That's frankly absurd. There's lots of occasions where everybody cannot like something and something be terrible. And frankly, we're not going to know how terrible this may be because we're not going to get the chance for public input. I'm also very concerned that there is no accountability built into this. There's no accountability built into what this group may do 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. I don't think the Senate's going to pass this anyways. And I think if they do pass something, it's going to be radically different from this and they're going to kick it back over to us. There's been suggestions that, well, we might add things in the conference committee at the end. Well, the Supreme Court told us that we need to be more careful about how we consider that. I agree with Rep. Bronco. We need to have, you know, all stakeholders on the committee, and they're not, like astronomy, for example. And if you try to throw that in at the end of conference and we never voted on that, well, that creates a possibility for a legal challenge and disrupts the whole apple cart. So yeah, it's a work in progress, but we're just going to stop halfway and push it through. There's lots of other editorial comments I want to make, but probably shouldn't. So I'm a no without reservations.
Thank you very much. Members, any further comments? Members of the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs.
Yes, Chair.
Representative Tokioka.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, as a Native Hawaiian, this bill or this working group is controversial, but we can't just sit back and do nothing. So I think this is a work in progress. And I disagree a little bit with some of the things that were said about this being the only time that we're going to have input. I remember the super ferry, we had a big committee, and at the end, how it started to how it ended was totally different. And it was a collaboration of a lot of different ideas at the end. I think this is one of those things. And for me personally, the two lead chairs on the first two committees are from that item. And so when they talked to me about it and they gave me their reasoning for doing it, it's their island. And I wouldn't, if it was something on my island, I would appreciate it if they took into consideration the thoughts that I had, because they are closer to the people than I am. So to Chair Tarnas and Chair Nakashima, I know how hard you folks have worked on this bill. And who knows what happens at the end. We're still going to get another opportunity to vote at the end. And who knows what happens then, but for right now, you put a lot of work into this, and I respect that process, and we'll see what happens from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tokioka. Members, any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the vote. Representative Chiyama for the vote.
Members are voting on House Bill 2024. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Matsuyoshi is excused. I vote aye.
Aye, Chair. Aye. Representative Matayoshi is here.
Oh, sorry. Rep Matsuyoshi?
Aye.
Rep Dale Kobayashi?
No.
Rep Lopresti?
No.
Rep Lowen?
With reservations.
Rep McKelvey?
WR, please.
Rep Nakamura?
Aye.
Rep Takumi?
Excused.
Rep Takumi is excused. Rep Tokioka?
Aye.
Sorry, I couldn't catch that.
Aye. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you. Rep Ward?
Rep Ward, you are muted.
No with reservations. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee on Finance.
Thank you. Moving on to Committee on Finance, same recommendation based on the amendments proposed by the Waterland Chair. Any discussion? Representative Malberger.
Thank you, Chair. After listening to the testimony a couple Saturdays ago, and everyone agreeing that this issue is so complicated, just to boil it down to the staying true to my own values and how I want to conduct work here at the legislature. 4 years ago, I promised myself that I would try to give voice to the voiceless and disenfranchised. So I had really confidence instilling conversations with Auntie Noi Wong Wilson, who really gave me confidence in the fact that this process can be a positive one. So I'll be voting aye with reservations, with deference to the small business community that the path isn't clear for them. But my conversations with Auntie Noi were very good and very inspiring, and how we can improve this situation that clearly the University of Hawaii has not managed well. I think that taking the Mauna out of their hands and putting it into hands for better stewardship is a good path to start. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Any other discussion? Anyone else? Representative Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank the lead chairs who authored this bill and who made the amendments. I was really torn, I have to say, until yesterday, on how to vote, how to best represent my community, for whom this is a really important issue. Mostly concerned about having a Native Hawaiian voice and presence in the management of Mauna Kea, but also part of my community very concerned about the future of astronomy there and very worried about setting a precedent of one group being able to silence, science by deeming it somehow competing with their cultural values. And so I really appreciate the amendments. It made it much easier for me. I feel that with the amendments, I wish there were another hearing so we could hear from the public themselves to see if those amendments address their concerns. But my interpretation is that they would address a lot of the concerns that we heard at the Saturday hearing and in the written testimony. So I appreciate those amendments. And while I understand it's not perfect, I do respect that the chairs are from that area and are working in a situation where they're much better able to understand the local dynamics and needs and desires of that host community. And so I will be voting aye, although I understand that there is some uncertainty about the future of this group and checks on them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion?
Chair.
Representative Hope.
Thank you. I too have the same concern about the process, but going forward, we have to try to do something. And this Friday, the Hawaiian Caucus will be having a talk story with Antinoinoi and the Mauna Kea folks who want to get their input on the HD ones. Thank you to the chairs for doing all the work, but I'll be voting with reservation.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion from the Finance Committee? If not, please take the vote.
Members, we're voting on House Bill 2024 with amendments. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Representatives Branco.
With reservations.
Eli.
Aye.
Hope with reservation. Iligan.
Aye.
Kobayashi, same vote.
WR.
Okay, Martin is an aye. Nishimoto. Excuse. Peruso. Excuse. Sayama.
Reservations.
Sorry, I was
Oh,
muted.
she's on. Yeah.
Go ahead.
With reservations.
Reservations. Sayama with reservations. Cam.
Aye.
Todd.
Aye.
Wahlberger with reservations. McDermott.
Yes.
Recommendation adopted.
Thank you to all the members of these three committees for your work on this. There being no further business before us today, this hearing is adjourned.